firstly talk about why this is important. Like, jokes aside.
Yeah. So Bitcoin is a genius system, right?
Yeah.
It allows merchants, entrepreneurs to define for themselves and to verify and to enforce the rules of their monetary game, basically. You as the end merchant define what coins are valid, and that's incredible. And this means that you can even verify for yourself what's the total money supply. 21 million Bitcoin is a huge meme, of course, and that's awesome. But this only works if every user verifies every transaction of every other user. And so you need to tell a lot of people about transactions that you're making. And well, financial transactions are sensitive and to a large extent need to know, and this means we need to find a pretty cool way, or like we have to be a bit smart about how do we make these public transactions in a way that it's not as easy to get sensitive personal information out of them. And so that's kind of the why. We have this beautifully verifiable system, but now we have to use it in a private way without compromising on any of the verification features. Right? And that's where CoinJoins come in.
So where does the technology, who came up with CoinJoin? Was it Greg Maxwell?
Even in the white paper, Satoshi has like a half sentence or like a sentence that each user, like all of the inputs in a transaction belong to one user, basically. And that's, I guess the very root cause of CoinJoin, right? He assumes that all the inputs belong to one user, right? And he does it in the white paper already, which is crazy. A couple of years later, that is known as the common input ownership heuristic. Right? And then in 2010-ish, I think there were a couple further kind of thoughts and research on how to make transactions where not all of the inputs belong to one user. Right? But
I'm just going to do something here because we might have people listening and go, what the hell are you on about inputs? So shall I have a go?
Sure.
Oh God, this is a test. Right. So if you want to send someone some Bitcoin, say I want to send over to Danny like half a Bitcoin in my wallet. Now I'm sending I have a load of UTXOs. UTXOs represent different amounts. It's like money, right? It's like I could have a 0.2 Bitcoin. I could have a 0.13845 Bitcoin. And so to send Danny my half a Bitcoin, it takes a number of those UTXOs and creates the outputs.
Yep.
The outputs, yeah. No, the inputs.
Well, so
they create the inputs to of which I get an output.
It's kind of both, right? So you're saying the unspent transaction output gets referenced on the input.
On the input, yeah.
Exactly.
And what it will do, it will take a number of them to make that total amount. And then if I haven't gotten the exact amount, it will take an additional one and it will overspend and it will send that back to me as change.
Exactly. Right.
There you go.
The
fucking hell.
Yeah,
nice.
You see? So the inputs are the coins that are being spent and the outputs are the coins that are being received, so to say.
Yeah.
Right? And whenever you receive a coin on the output side, then you can spend it later on the input side of a new transaction, of the second transaction.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so the idea of a CoinJoin then, and Gregory Maxwell formalized that, I believe it was 2013 in a legendary Bitcoin talk or Bitcoin forum post, where he explained a way or the concept that multiple users can get together and collaboratively build a single Bitcoin transaction, right? Where there's hundreds of inputs. Some of them belong to you, some belong to me, some belong to the others, right? And then there are a bunch of outputs, again, belonging to kind of everyone. But the really cool thing is, right, once we're kind of coordinating this new transaction, as long as it's unsigned, there's no Bitcoin being moved, right? Because Bitcoin can only be moved if you have a valid transaction with a valid signature of all the inputs. And so even if we have hundreds of inputs here from many different users, as long as even one of them does not sign, there's a signature missing on the input side, so the transaction doesn't go through.
So what actually happens? So how does that then? How do I still have essentially a mixed Bitcoin, if you're not signing it and sending it?
Well, then nothing changed, right? It's in that sense atomic, right? So we're trying to make a CoinJoin, all right? You register your inputs, you register your outputs, but then you don't sign, right? Well, on the Bitcoin blockchain, this transaction is not there, right? Because it's not signed, it's not broadcast, the miner didn't put it in a block, right? So for anyone looking at the Bitcoin blockchain, your coins never moved.
All right, hold on a second. We've got to go back a step so I understand this. I know when I send Danny some Bitcoin, I sign the transaction, and that's now Danny's, right?
Well, it has to be confirmed on the blockchain.
Yeah, of course.
That's the crucial thing.
It has to be confirmed. Okay. When so when I send mine to this wallet, it will be signed and confirmed on the blockchain for it to exist within my Wasabi wallet.
Yes.
Then you CoinJoin.
Mm-hmm.
How do my UTXOs change?
Well, some UTXOs get destroyed, right? Some coins are being spent on the input side. And then you get on the output side a bunch of new coins, outputs that you can spend in the future.
After the CoinJoin?
Well, inside the CoinJoin. It's like a CoinJoin is just a transaction, right? Bunch of inputs, bunch of outputs.
So therefore something does get signed?
Well, so you register all your inputs, right?
Yeah.
Then you register all your outputs, and you wait until everyone else has done that as well.
Yeah.
And then it's the third phase, the signing phase. And here, all the participants of that CoinJoin look at the final transaction with all the inputs and all the outputs. They check if everything is all right. Like you want to make sure that you still got 0.01 Bitcoin in this CoinJoin, for example, and not that someone stealing money from you.
Yeah.
So you verify that. Once you're happy, you sign for your inputs this specific transaction. Right? But this specific transaction, even when you signed it, it's still not valid because there are other coins, other inputs that don't have a signature yet. Right? So even if you would broadcast this transaction out to the blockchain, the miners or other full nodes would be like, no, there's like 10 inputs here, only 5 of them are signed, the others are not signed, that's not a valid transaction, so it will never get onto the blockchain.
Okay, but what I don't understand is how those UTXOs, what's happened here to change my UTXOs?
Yeah, so...
do you understand where I'm getting lost here, Danny?
I understand.
Do you understand?
Not technically, no.
Because in my head, to CoinJoin, my assumption was it was like a mixer. I put a bunch of UTXOs in, you put a bunch in, Danny does. It all gets mixed up, and then transaction gets signed, and then I get back these new UTXOs, and nobody knows what happened.
Yes, but
hold on, but that wouldn't work because the blockchain would follow it.
Well, there's a couple nuances here, right? So you said you put money into the mixer and later you get it out, right? So that's how custodial mixers work. That's you make a transaction to someone else's private keys, and that first transaction, deposit transaction, goes onto the blockchain. Right? That's you spend your input alone and you generate an output into the mixer, basically. And then later, a week later, you make a second transaction where you spend the coin from the mixer onto your own personal addresses, for example. Right? But here, someone else has full control over your money. Right? Between that deposit transaction and the withdrawal transaction, the keys are with them and they can do whatever they want. Right? CoinJoin is fundamentally different. Right? In CoinJoin, the money doesn't move unless everyone agrees. It's kind of atomic. Right? If one person disagrees, if one person doesn't sign, nothing changes.
But for the CoinJoin to work, do we need everyone to sign?
Yes.
Oh.
You need everyone's cooperation.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. So I thought you were saying the CoinJoin happens without everyone signing.
No, you need to have, for all of the inputs that are present, you need to have a valid signature.
Yeah. But when you were saying if we don't have a valid signature, I thought you were saying the CoinJoin happens because...
Oh, no. Okay, then maybe I misspoke. Then it cannot happen if there's no signature.
Let me go back. Like, I'm going to imagine those fucks at Chain Analysis are following me, right? I've got a known wallet, okay, of my own. They know it. If I opened a Wasabi wallet and I send to that from that wallet, is that a mistake? So say I've got my wallet here that I've been using for years. Chain Analysis know exactly who I am because I've just not cared about my privacy. I open up a Wasabi wallet and I'm like, all right, I want to get my shit together. So I send some Bitcoin from that known wallet to a Wasabi wallet. Am I suddenly being followed to the wallet? And that Wasabi wallet, they know who I am.
Well, Chain Analysis will presumably follow you just like they did in the past, right? So they will see that out of your coin cluster, you made a payment that went to a new address.
Yeah.
At that point, they don't know who owns that address or what is this, right? This might be a payment that you make to someone else.
But this one's a potential Pete or a payment.
No, like this transaction from your ledger to your Wasabi, for example, like after you make that first transaction, they still don't really know what happened here. Right?
But I'm trying to think in all the scenarios they're trying to track people down. They might go, every transaction I send, like for example, do they know it's a Wasabi wallet?
Not after the first transaction. Like at your state where we're right now, I don't think they know that this is a Wasabi address now.
Okay.
Right. But at the later point, right, as soon as you CoinJoin, you're spending the coin that you received from Ledger into Wasabi right, in a CoinJoin with hundreds of other inputs.
So if I was them, I would go, right, every time he hops to a new address and then CoinJoins, that's a potential Pete going to CoinJoin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So should I hop before coin joining?
I guess you could. It's of course expensive because you have to make another transaction. That costs you time and money, obviously, and others have to verify it. And arguably, it doesn't help you much. Arguably, it's not a problem at all. I personally never had any issues with.
And I guess it's
joining.
like once I'm in the Wasabi and I've coin joined, who gives a fuck because they don't know where it's going after.
Exactly, but they do know that you or someone whom you paid is interested in Wasabi. Right?
So I've got my Wasabi wallet here, my address. Once I've coin joined, is that sat in a separate wallet within my Wasabi wallet?
No, it sends into the same wallet multiple new coins.
Okay, but how can somebody track in that? Won't they just know?
Well, that's the beautiful thing, right? If you are all alone in your transaction,
yeah.
Let's say you have one input and two outputs, then it's pretty easy to see, okay, someone just made a payment. One of those outputs went to the merchant, the other is to change, right? That's pretty easy to figure out. However, now imagine you have a transaction with like 300 inputs and 300 outputs, and you don't know how many people are making this transaction. You don't know if they're making payments. You don't know if one user just has one coin registered or if that user has 10 coins registered on the input side. And you don't know. That makes it just a lot more complex to figure out.
And then from that new CoinJoin address where I've done all my coin joining, if I went to a website and wanted to buy some stuff with Bitcoin and it was a place where I was like, had to put my address in, I'm a dumbass because I've suddenly exposed myself that the entire thing's me, right? Potentially.
Well, yes, of course. But what you did not expose is where did you get that money and how much money did you receive in the past? Because maybe you're Satoshi and you have your Genesis block coins still around, and you don't want that website to know that Peter McCormack is actually Satoshi. Right? And then if you would do a coin join with those early coins, then you get new coins back, basically, and those are no longer as easily tied to the Genesis.
So the new coins because you can trace coins, the journey they go on, right?
Well, you kind of, so I'm saying kind of because in many cases you're absolutely right, especially if there's like one user doing the transaction, then it's pretty obvious. But as soon as we have like hundreds of inputs and outputs, it becomes super, super difficult to do it. Yes, in some cases you can, but definitely not in all.
Is it not like a Sudoku puzzle?
Yeah, it is. Kind of.
So when you're doing a coin join, you're waiting to coin join. Are you always waiting for a certain number of people?
Yes. And we're basically waiting for, at least right now as we've configured it, at least 150 inputs being registered.
Okay.
Right? And I think a maximum of something like 400 is where we're targeting it. And usually that's going to happen maybe once every 30 minutes.
Okay.
Sometimes once every 10
decent.
minutes. It depends on the number of users online at this very moment,
What are those fucks chain analysis trying to do? Like, how are they trying to break down what you're doing? It must be up to something. Like, are they throwing transactions in? Are they?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that there was any public statements that they do. I'm not sure if they would tell us if they
wouldn't tell you. And they valued at like 9 billion now. Something ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So right, the idea of a coin join is that you get together with a bunch of other users. Mm-hmm. That when there are a bunch of other users, it's very difficult to follow input to output. But then that means that if one entity kind of fakes to be 99 different users, and you're the 100th user,
they're spending a lot of money to do that.
That's exactly it, right? You can do that, but it's really, really expensive to do that, especially when there's a large liquidity at that coordinator.
I'm assuming they've probably got some like probabilistic tools they're using to try and map activity, but it gets difficult.
It does get difficult, and I'm thinking for Wasabi 1.0 they could get a lot of interesting like data to fingerprint, because for example in Wasabi 1.0 there was still this change output where one of those outputs was very easily linked to some of the inputs.
Right.
And basically anyone could do that. And stuff like this, they probably made easy to see in their tools, right? But with Wasabi 2.0, we fundamentally changed that, right? So now there's no more change output on the output side, but all of the outputs that you get should be private and very difficult to link to your inputs, right? So we made it a lot more difficult for chain analysis and others to try to follow this. And
good.
I don't think they have anything as of now. I would be very surprised. Just because it's cat and mouse game and we just made the first move, But we'll see how it goes. With all of these privacy things, it's if you have an adversary that is super rich and has a lot of time and is very dedicated to get you, he can probably get you. And it's then also a question about for what time window do you want to stay private? Because it's unreasonable to assume that you can stay private for like the next 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But maybe for
Probably
the next
won't live for the next 1,000 years.
exactly
as well.
right. But for the next couple months, we can probably deter an adversary to not find you in that short time.